Our house is so gloomy because someone sleeps all day. It's really troublesome because she can't even take care of herself, let alone do the housework. I wonder how long she plans to just lie there. Whenever they see me, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law always complain. Seriously, having a daughter-in-law who does nothing is the same as not having one at all. There's no point in having such a wife, my father-in-law added, expressing his dissatisfaction. I, Hillary Brown, am 32 years old. It's been 5 years since I got married. My father passed away due to an illness when I was in high school, and my mother passed away right after I got married. Ever since I was young, I loved drawing and have been aspiring to become a picture book author. After graduating from high school, I went to a design school and then worked as an illustrator at a small design firm. My husband works at an advertising agency, and our meeting was initiated when he came to my company to request character design. After dating for 2 years, we got married and started living with his parents and sister. Becoming a freelancer upon marriage, I could work from home. I tried my best to be an excellent wife by dedicating myself to house chores. My mother-in-law didn't care much for housework and left it all to me, which made it relatively easy for me. My sister-in-law had little interest in house chores and was often busy with dining out or parties with friends and colleagues, so we seldom had meals together, but there were no major issues. However, 3 years ago, I fell down the stairs at a station and suffered severe injuries, which changed my life significantly. I now have severe lower limb paralysis due to spinal cord injury. Although it was a huge shock at first, I have gradually adapted to this situation over the years. Initially, my in-laws were very concerned, but it seems they did not imagine I would remain unable to walk, and their attitudes changed over time. During this time, my sister-in-law got married and moved out. I'm so glad I don't have to look at you anymore, Hillary, she joked. Being nearly bedridden, the cold demeanor I got from my in-laws was apparent. Indeed, having a bedridden family member brought various troubles, so I couldn't retort to my in-laws' sarcasm. In the old family home, where there was not enough space for a wheelchair, I had no choice but to mostly stay in bed all day since I couldn't move without one. Fortunately, I was working from home even before the accident, so I was able to continue my job. I was grateful that I was able to work since I could move my upper body. I am currently supported by a helper and a maid who come to assist with house chores. If I were living alone, the helper would support me with my daily life, but the scope is limited because I live with my family. The helper mainly provides physical support. My husband is too busy to take care of my daily needs, but my in-laws are very healthy. My mother-in-law is healthy, and my father-in-law, who retired last year at 65, is always at home. Since there are healthy family members at home who do not work, the support from the home helper for cleaning, laundry, and shopping is limited. In the first 2 years, my in-laws occasionally helped, but gradually they did it less often. I understand that my mother-in-law, who dislikes house chores, finds it bothersome to do my share as well. My husband initially was encouraging, but now he hardly speaks to me and offers no support. He only says, I have work, and caregiving is not something men do. Even if my in-laws don't help, the helper must follow the rules and can't provide life support. However, seeing my in-laws' reaction, the helper got concerned and introduced a maid. Hiring a maid is such a waste. Why would you say that? But I have personal needs, and without laundry service, I'll run out of clothes to wear. Do you intend to use me? Even though you're just a daughter-in-law? I don't intend to, but given the situation, I have no choice but to ask. When I conveyed this, my in-laws looked at me with annoyance. Really? You are a nuisance. We can't afford this in our house. I'll manage that myself. I was once again grateful that I could continue working. And so the maid came. The maid, Sarah, was a 52-year-old woman who lost her husband early and had no children. She somehow reminded me of my deceased mother. She was a warm person who cared with all her heart, and I am truly grateful. Now, the only people I could talk to were not my family, but Sarah and the helper. When Sarah visited, My in-laws immediately tried to ask her to do their errands as well. Can you also take care of our laundry and cleaning? I can't do that. What? Aren't you a maid? What are you here for? If you want that service, it will incur additional charges. Will you pay for it? If so, I can accommodate. Why are you so arrogant? Such a troublesome maid. Despite such exchanges, I felt somewhat relieved that Sarah clearly refused. This situation continued for about a year when my sister-in-law returned after getting a divorce. She insisted that her husband's infidelity was the reason. He's dumb, got seduced by another woman. Such a troublesome man, she said, though her ex-husband, who worked at a renowned company, seemed very sincere and not the type to cheat. I found it odd but kept quiet to avoid causing any trouble. It's so helpful to have a maid here. Of course, you'll take care of me too, right? My sister-in-law said the same as my in-laws, but Sarah firmly refused. Sarah did not have a favorable view of my in-laws, who were not kind to me. I refuse. Then what are you here for? I am here to assist Hillary with her daily tasks. What? Well, just as useless as the daughter-in-law. Hillary must be skimping, right? Well, it's not like she earns more than pennies. She's a failure who can't even take care of herself, and that's why I have no choice but to rely on the maid. You and your mother can take care of yourselves, right? When I counted like this, they fell silent, but the sarcasm from my in-laws got worse when my sister-in-law returned. A bedridden wife is just a nuisance. Now that Megan is back, the house feels too small with you here. Megan is all we need. It must be nice to have it easy, just lolling in bed all day. Even while I was working, Megan made a point to come to my room just to be sarcastic. Fed up with the daily sarcasm, I talked to my husband. Hey, can you ask your mother and Megan to be a little bit more mindful with their words? I get hurt too, but it's the truth, isn't it? What do you mean by truth? You can't do housework and you spend all day in bed. I'm not just spending time in bed. I'm actually working. But you're working from bed, right? Seems like an easy job. I'm tired from commuting. That might be true, but I'm trying to be useful and I'm making an effort too. It's understandable that mom and others are frustrated. You're not fulfilling your role as a wife. Do you really mean that? Just try not to get so worked up. It's tiring to sweat the small stuff. That was all he said, showing no empathy. I feel the inconvenience in my body and it's painful not being understood at all. If I were healthy, if I could live a normal life, how different would each day be? I just wanted my husband to understand the harshness and sadness of my current situation. I can't stop crying when I think that my feelings might be just me being selfish. Despite my physical limitations since the accident, I've tried to keep moving forward, telling myself there are others in tougher situations. At times like this, I feel lonely without having a trustworthy family by my side. But at the same time, I'm glad that my parents don't have to see my current state. However, it seems there was no one in this house to support me anymore, which increased my sense of isolation. I didn't have a place to return to, and just when I was contemplating a new life with my husband, he surprised me with his words. I've been thinking over what my mom and others said. I briefly felt happy, thinking he tried to understand my situation. But his next words plunged me into deep despair. I ended up agreeing with them. What do you mean? I think it's better to find a younger, healthier wife. What? I still want kids, but with you. It'll be difficult now. It felt like a blow to the head. I couldn't believe my own husband would say this. I realized I couldn't expect anything more from him. He kept talking, but I couldn't hear a thing. However, I understood that my husband wanted a divorce. You're truly useless, just like a big piece of trash. You might be paying for the maid, but your salary isn't much, so there's hardly anything left after paying her. You're just baggage, a parasite in our house. That's true. The helper costs money too. A money-eating parasite should just leave. Disdained by my husband and his family, there was no reason for me to stay. Even without a home to return to, I decided it would be fine as long as I found a new place to live. Maybe I'll move out. With Sarah's help, I began looking for a new place. Sarah was supportive, and it was convenient to handle the procedures online. Once everything was prepared, I handed the completed divorce papers to my husband. "You finally decided, but don't resent me. Blame your condition. I understand, but are you really okay with this? With me leaving? Of course. I'll find someone more suitable. Everyone says I can find a better wife. Will your life be okay? Don't worry. There's Dad's retirement money, and Megan got a good settlement from the divorce. We won't have financial issues for a while, so I don't need to rely on you anymore. All right, do as you wish." My husband seemed oblivious to reality, but I didn't speak further and left my in-laws' house. There was a silver lining. Living alone meant the helper could now support me with daily living activities. She helped with cleaning, laundry, and shopping, which was a great relief. Sarah continued to support me as well. She used to be a career woman at a large corporation, skilled in computer use. She left her job after getting married, tired of the bustling corporate life. It's been 20 years now. Sarah laughed as she spoke, but her past experiences seemed to empower her to stand up to my in-laws. Now, she's more of a coordinator for my work than a maid, and her support is indispensable. She's happy to help, which is a great relief. Moreover, my new apartment was barrier-free, suitable for wheelchair users, allowing me to move independently. The kitchen was spacious, enabling me to cook on my own. As I was getting used to the new days, persistent calls from my mother-in-law began. However, I decided not to talk to her anymore and ignored all her calls. With Sarah's help, I was able to focus on my work without worrying about my in-laws' criticism, which significantly advanced my work progress. My work increased so much that I didn't have time to deal with my mother-in-law. A year later, the contacts from my mother-in-law became less frequent, but they still occurred. As my life had stabilized, I decided to answer the phone when she called. "Hello, you finally picked up the phone. Why have you been ignoring me?" "I was worried because you never answered. I thought something might have happened." I was addressed in a tone softer than I had ever heard before. During our time living together, she never showed concern for me. I felt she was probably overwhelmed by reality and at a loss. I wondered about the kind of life she imagined I had been leading this past year. "I'm sorry if I caused you any concern. I am very well and living my days peacefully, so please don't worry." "That's a relief, but there's something I want to ask." "What is it?" "Won't you consider living with us again, like before?" "Me? I was once considered just a nuisance, a parasite. Living with me again, there wouldn't be any benefit for you. I've had a change of heart. I can't abandon someone with physical limitations like you. We'll take care of you from now on so you don't have to worry." "No, thank you. Living alone, the helper provides daily support. I can ask for help with cleaning, laundry, shopping, and Sarah assists me with my work, so I have no worries." "I wanted to ask about your work. Is it true that you were earning more than Ted?" "Yes, it's true. But it seems Ted had forgotten that by the time we divorced." "Hillary, Ted told me you were making $15,000 a month. My salary supported the household expenses at my in-laws. Initially, my in-laws helped due to my physical limitations, and this coincided with a decrease in my husband's income due to his company's poor performance. Fortunately, my income increased. That's why I brought it up with my husband. At first, he said, 'I'm sorry,' and asked me to keep the decrease in his income a secret to not worry his parents. However, after nearly 3 years, it seemed he had forgotten that I was the one making the payments. When we divorced, I deliberately didn't mention his income. Moreover, I knew that my sister-in-law's divorce wasn't due to her husband's infidelity but her own, which the brother-in-law had informed me about. I learned that she had taken money without permission and lied about receiving compensation. Her husband said he would ensure she returned the money and would claim compensation. I decided to divorce before my in-laws could learn about this fact. When I revealed the truth to my mother-in-law, she was speechless for a while. Ted became obsessed with a woman he met at a nightclub and ended up in debt. That was the reason for the divorce, I suppose. Perhaps you were hoping for that woman's income? That's not true. They weren't in a relationship. He was just one of her customers. That might be the case. Did you know about this? Yes, I knew everything. Why didn't you tell me? Did you also know that Ted's company was in trouble? Of course, I knew that too. To know all that and say nothing. How cruel. According to my former mother-in-law, my sister-in-law eloped with her affair partner but was eventually abandoned and returned with a significant debt. My ex-husband's company went bankrupt 6 months ago, and though he's job hunting, he claims nothing suits him and is currently unemployed. I heard he's lost confidence and has shut himself away. My husband's retirement fund also got exhausted because the children moved back in. On top of that, there's still debt remaining. Is that so? I think everything will work out if you come back. I can't understand that at all. I couldn't grasp what she meant by working out and why she would say such a thing after driving me away. I never expected things to change so much in just a year. It was quite fast, wasn't it? My ex-husband probably never imagined his company would actually go bankrupt. Given his lack of attention to anything, it was predictable. My mother-in-law pleaded in tears. If I had known, I wouldn't have chosen to let go of you, but it was too late now. All she talked about was financial worries. They only thought about their own lives. My sister-in-law didn't seem motivated to find a job and kept gaining weight as she just ate and slept. We had to sell the house to pay off the children's debts. The family home was old and not worth much, and after deducting demolition costs, it didn't amount to much. Now they're living cramped in a small apartment, in a dire situation. My former in-laws are exhausted, working part-time jobs from morning till evening, or so I heard her crying over the phone. Because you didn't pick up the phone, we ended up in this situation. If we had been able to contact you before selling the house, what do you think would have happened? If you had known, you would have helped, right? You lived in that house too, so you must have had some attachment to it. That's not true, though. What? The thought of how self-centered their thinking was nothing but astonishing. I'm glad I ignored the calls. Even if I had answered, I wouldn't have agreed to such a discussion. So, Ted and Megan are all depending on you, Debbie, and your husband now. Hillary, please come back. We have no one to rely on but you now. I'm sorry, but I am a stranger now and can't help you. Don't say that. We know how terrible we were in the past. We apologize. Let's build a barrier-free house with your money and live together. I couldn't understand how she could make such a proposal. It made my head hurt. I had to make things clear and end this conversation. I refuse. I answered your call today because I had something to tell you. What is it? I intend to claim damages from you. Why should we pay you damages? Ted didn't have an affair with the lady from the nightclub. He was just a customer. Not for the affair, but for the mental anguish caused by the verbal abuse from you. What? When I mentioned that I had recorded all their abusive behavior as evidence, my former mother-in-law was clearly shaken and hurriedly ended the call. Maybe she was afraid of being charged with something. Maybe because she knew they were guilty. Later, through a lawyer, I filed a claim for damages. They conveyed their current situation and begged for the claim to be waived, but I had no intention of agreeing. Having secured a new job illustrating children's books, I'm moving closer to my dream of being a picture book author. After many trials, I plan to continue moving forward independently and positively without being lenient on myself. I'm a little shocked that you would criticize my mother-in-law. If you're not working, why don't you get out of here? My sister-in-law and mother-in-law, who did not know that I was taking over my mother-in-law's debt, threw these words at me without the slightest sense of gratitude. Yes, I understand. But it's up to you guys from now on. The day I packed my bags, they realized a fact I had been hiding and put their heads together. My name is Emma. I am 32 years old, a busy career woman working in an office in the city. When I was a student, I spent most of my time in the corner of the library absorbed in my books. After I got a job, I was buried under a mountain of work and forgot to take time for myself. One of my friends, who sincerely cared about me, said, "Emma, why don't you try to cherish your love life a little?" And she organized a group blind date for me. Then, a man whose eyes met mine was John, who worked in a building in the city center. He is a fresh salaryman working in a building in the city center. And to my surprise, he seemed to be a little interested in me. I was nervous about the feeling of dating after a long time, but supported by his kind words, we gradually opened our hearts to each other. Then he made a gentle confession to me, and our love accelerated. Only 1 year later, we decided to get married. It was like a dream come true that I, who had been so absorbed in my work, could stand at such a wonderful turning point in my life. My friend who organized the group blind date was also surprised at our sudden development. She said, "Oh, really? You're getting married?" I said, "Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? But it's great. I'm so glad I organized that group blind date. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the wedding. I'm looking forward to it." Thus, I was to open the door to a new life. First, we reported to each other's families. Seeing me so happy, my parents welcomed him warmly. "Emma, you haven't told me about your boyfriend for a long time, so I was a little worried that maybe you wouldn't get married. John, please take care of her from now on." When I heard these words, I felt as if I realized for the first time what my parents really thought of me. I realized that parents think a lot of things without saying them. My family had been basically free to do whatever I wanted, so there was no pressure to get married. But it seems that in my parents' mind, there was a wish to see their daughter happily married someday. Knowing such a parent's wish made my heart warm a little. And when I visited John's house for the first time, I met his family with nervous excitement. But his mother and father were both very warm and made me feel very safe. Next, we had dinner with the whole family. While I was looking forward to it, I was also a little nervous, especially because I had heard that John's sister, Melissa, was there. She was only 25 years old, and her choice of words was a little rough at times, which made me a little confused. She asked me, "Emma, you're already at that age. Weren't you getting married too late?" I was a little shocked to hear her say things like, "I would have decided sooner if I were you." But John followed up and we had a nice dinner afterwards. We then planned our wedding and had a happy wedding at a place we loved. We had a lot of friends and family there, and the day was really great. Our honeymoon was so much fun, and when we returned home, we started our new life together. Life together was fresh, and every day was so much fun. We went out on dates and watched movies at home. I felt that newlyweds are really happy. It has been about 2 years since we got married. One day, our peaceful everyday life changed drastically. We received the news that my father-in-law had passed away. Of course, I knew he had health problems, but I had not expected him to pass away so soon. My husband and I were deeply saddened by this sudden news. My mother-in-law's grief was especially deep, and I could feel her emotions as I looked at her. But our surprise was compounded by what we subsequently found out. In fact, my mother-in-law was in deep debt. It was apparently due to the fact that she had been cheated by some unscrupulous person and lost a large sum of money. When we learned of this fact, we could only gape. My husband, with his usual gentle nature, said he wanted to help her somehow. So, we decided to use our shared savings to reduce my mother-in-law's debt as much as possible. I thought it would be too hard for her to bear that heavy debt alone after my father-in-law's death. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was a little unexpected. She said something like, "If I am in trouble again, can I ask John for help?" My husband was a little surprised and replied, "That's a little." My mother-in-law said something positive, "But I'll find a way to get more money somehow." But my husband was worried. "I hope that's not gambling." We kept a watchful eye on my mother-in-law and were on the lookout for any trouble she might get herself into again. In the midst of all this, my husband was suddenly injured and had to be hospitalized. That event also became a big ordeal for my husband and me. Since every day was spent flitting back and forth from the hospital to take care of my husband, I never noticed any changes in my mother-in-law's daily routine. Then one day, after my husband was discharged from the hospital, I decided to pay a little visit to his parents' home. During our first reunion in a long time, I could sense that something had changed in the atmosphere. "Mom, long time no see." My husband greeted her with a smile, and my mother-in-law said, "John, you are getting better. Can you run again?" She smiled at him and said. While smiling at this exchange, my husband began to flip through my mother-in-law's bank book. To his surprise, the money in his mother-in-law's bank book, which we had accumulated after her previous debts had been repaid, was almost completely gone. "What's wrong with this bank book, Mother?" my husband exclaimed in surprise, to which his mother-in-law replied with a slightly embarrassed smile, "You know, I had tea with friends and found a nice little bag. And then I found myself in this mess." She laughed bitterly. With that one word, my husband and I froze in complete surprise. It was as if we had saved money for our mother-in-law's future, and she had spent it happily without a care in the world. My husband couldn't help but say, "Mom, you shouldn't spend it like this. Do you know how much we put our hearts into giving you money for your future?" He said something like that. Seeing my mother-in-law's remorse, we became truly concerned about her future. We suggested that she move in with us to support her life closer to us. When we broached the subject, my mother-in-law's eyes lit up with joy, and she gave up her house and moved into our apartment. Our new shared life together began, and my mother-in-law seemed to enjoy every day of it. The three of us laughed and talked around the table at every meal, and my mother-in-law volunteered to help with the housework, which made life surprisingly easy for both of us. Her upbeat mood was infectious, and our days became brighter and warmer. I said, "Mom, what would you like for lunch today?" I think I'll have udon." "That sounds good." Since I was working remotely, I was in a position to monitor how my mother-in-law spent her money. Since my husband and I, provided her living expenses and my husband managed my mother-in-law's account, there was supposed to be no worry about her spending excessive money. However, we kept a close eye on her, worried that she might spend the money in some way. These days continued, and in no time at all, 6 months passed. One afternoon, while we were relaxing in the living room, the intercom rang. We wondered who it was, and when I answered, I found my sister-in-law, Melissa, standing there. I said, "Melissa, it's been a while. Is my mother there?" I was a little surprised to hear her ask such a question without even saying hello, but I showed her into the living room. "Mom, it's been a while." "Oh, Melissa, what brings you here?" "I just wanted to see your face once in a while." "Thanks, I'm glad you're here. How are you?" "Of course. I'm fine. John is with me. So, do you want to go to lunch with me?" "Sure, let's go." Melissa must have taken my mother-in-law to a restaurant or something. We decided to wait at home. When they came home in the evening, we looked at them and their faces changed. Then Melissa said, "Emma, you are tormenting my mother, aren't you?" I was surprised and could not understand what she was saying. My mother-in-law also looked at me sternly. My husband said, "What are you talking about? There is no way Emma would do such a thing." He immediately took my side, but Melissa would not budge. "John is being deceived too. Mom says she can't go outside and she hears Emma is saying things inside the house." We could only be amazed. Indeed, there were times when my mother-in-law would ask to go shopping and we would refuse because she would waste money. Also, my mom said you were taking her money. I had to admit that this statement surprised me. Did my mother-in-law think so, or did Melissa blow it that way? In any case, it seemed that Melissa and my mother-in-law had joined together in accusing me. "Now, what do you want from me?" I was about to feel like I was bewitched by a fox. What on earth did they want to tell me? I wondered if they just wanted to say something to me. At that moment, my sister-in-law said something I never thought she would say. She said, "I want you to leave our house. I feel like my mother can't really live happily with you. Because I can't believe you treat my mother-in-law so coldly." Her face clouded over. My mother-in-law looked as if she wanted to say something and turned to me. "If you were gone, I would be able to relax and enjoy my time with John and Melissa." I was surprised by her words, but I could not say anything. In fact, they did not know that I had previously paid off her debts for my mother-in-law by cutting into my savings. Looking back, I probably should have made it clear to them at the time that I had not taken it out as our marital savings, but as my own. When I looked at my husband's face, he looked very angry. His hands were clenched and his body was shaking a little. Melissa said, "My mother and I are going to live here together from now on. So, I want you to leave," my sister-in-law said again. Taking a deep breath for a moment, I answered my sister-in-law, "I understand, but I won't get involved in what happens next." After that exchange, my husband and I decided to leave the house. And on the day we moved out, they were surprised to discover one truth. "Looks like you've made arrangements to move out right away after all." "Yes, I have something to tell Melissa." "Yes, what is it?" My husband chuckled and said, "Actually, I'm getting older and I was thinking that I should put the house in Melissa's name." My sister-in-law's eyes sparkled and she said, "Really? It's going to be my house?" she said excitedly. My husband quietly produced the documents for the change of name and said, "As long as you sign here, that's all right." My sister-in-law happily said, "I can't believe I have my own apartment," and signed it. My husband and I looked at each other stealthily and exchanged smiles at the success of our plan. "Well, it's time to start getting ready to leave." "What, John? Are you really leaving?" "Yes, I've decided to leave too." "Oh, even John is leaving? Do you really have to leave with Emma?" "If I'm not with Emma, I don't feel comfortable either. It's normal for married couples to be together." "I knew you would say that, but then what are we going to do about future house expenses and stuff?" "That's something you'll have to devise and pay for on your own." "Wait a minute. I quit my job because I believed you would support me, okay?" My husband and I could not hide our surprise at my sister-in-law's sudden statement. "If you keep this up, you're going to get me and our mother into a lot of trouble." "That's fine if you can devise a way to live on your own. You have our mother's pension, and if you save a little, you can manage." "Yes, and if you add my pension to that, we can manage. Since you're going to live here, we need to be creative about it." My sister-in-law looked a little satisfied with my mother-in-law's kind words. "Indeed. It's my new home. If I save a little money, I should be able to get by." However, my husband and I laughed inwardly at my sister-in-law saying such a thing, not knowing that the property was a rental. About that time, the movers arrived. We welcomed them and began to move more and more stuff out. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law rolled their eyes at the sight. "What are you doing?" "Getting ready to move out." "Are you taking everything?" "Of course. We bought all this stuff." "Do I have to buy everything new?" "That's right. I wish you had known that and acted accordingly." "Well, we better get going." My husband smiled and said, and we left the house. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law froze in amazement for a while. After a while, my sister-in-law called my husband's cell phone. She said, "Hey, John, what's with the rent bill all of a sudden?" I was a little mistaken. "Could it be that I am not the owner of this house?" "Who told you about that?" "Well, I'm actually renting this house. The document you signed at that time, which was the rental agreement. So, it's only natural that you should be charged for the rent." "Seriously? I didn't know that at all." "It's where you live, so you have to pay the rent. But my salary is not that much compared to you. You may laugh, but Emma actually makes more money than I do." "Oh, no. It's true. She is working hard at a remote company that pays pretty well. That's why we were able to live so comfortably in that apartment." My sister-in-law was so surprised that she was speechless for a while. Next, I heard my mother-in-law's worried voice. "We're so sorry," she said. "I'm really sorry. Could you please reconsider and come back?" My husband responded gently but firmly. "Thank you, Mother, but it's hard for me to go back because of your attitude toward Emma. She is the most important to me. Please take care of the rest." "You will take care of it." After that exchange, I heard various rumors. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law had apparently been forced to look for an apartment after getting tripped up on rent payments. They are now trying to make do in a small apartment that is barely big enough for the two of them to live in, but it is said that they are having financial problems and occasional fights. They are also concerned about the neighbors' eyes on them. John and I have started a new life in our new house. Every day is fun and full of